한반도에서 가장 먼저 아침이 시작되는 곳. 대한민국 최동단에 위치한 섬. 천연기념물 제336호로 지정된 자연유산. 이곳은 경상북도 울릉군 울릉읍 독도입니다. 그런데 일본이 대한민국 고유 영토인 독도를 일본 영토라며 일방적으로 주장하고 있어요. 그 때문에 독도와 관련된 잘못된 정보들이 퍼지고 있답니다. 안녕하세요. 저는 방크에서 활동하는 성혜승 연구원입니다. 방크는 1999년에 설립된 후 지속적으로 독도 바로 알리기 활동을 하고 있는데요. 지금부터 제가 독도에 대한 올바른 정보를 알려드리겠습니다. 독도는 역사적, 지리적, 국제법적으로 명백하게 대한민국 영토라고 할 수 있어요. 대한민국에 현존하는 가장 오래된 역사책인 삼국사기에 보면 독도는 신라 지증왕 13년, 그러니까 512년 전부터 한국 역사에 등장합니다. 대략 1500년 전부터 독도는 우리의 영토였던 거죠. 독도가 한국 땅이라는 역사적 증거는 이렇게 차고 넘쳐요. 지리적으로 살펴보면 일본 영토에서는 독도가 보이지 않지만 독도와 87km 떨어진 울릉도에서는 독도가 육안으로도 보일 정도로 가깝죠. 그리고 또 한 가지 중요한 사실. 독도에는 대한민국 독도경비대가 상주하고 있어요. 왜냐고요? 독도는 명백하게 대한민국이 지배하는 곳이니까요. 독도가 대한민국 고유의 영토라는 사실, 이제 확실히 아시겠죠? 한국 바로 알리기, 여러분도 함께 해주세요.
Drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million using this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
The moment we wear it, our spirits lift. It helps us grow strong in body and in mind. As we wear it, we learn patience and respect. The belt system motivates students to strive harder and continue growing. This uniform shapes movement into grace and turns performance into something thrilling. Now, embraced around the world, Taekwondo shares our culture, philosophy, and values with pride and spirit. Though it may seem simple, this uniform holds your passion and your journey. It belongs to Taekwondo. Wear the extraordinary. Be with Taekwondo.
Marking 100 days in office, President Lee Jae-myung held a press conference on Thursday where he prioritized reviving the country's economy and laid out his vision to realize his so-called pragmatic diplomacy. South Korean detainees in the U.S. will return home around 4 p.m. on Friday, Korea Standard Time, after a week-long detention in Georgia over illegal employment at a battery plant site. South Korea's ruling party unilaterally passed revised bills on special counsel investigations into the previous administration, just a day after the rival parties had reached an agreement on the revisions. We begin tonight with President Lee Jae-myung's press conference marking his 100th day in office. Reflecting on the past 3 months, President Lee once again put the revival of the South Korean economy as his #1 task. Our Song Yoo-jin starts us off.
Marking 100 days in office, President Lee Jae-myung said reviving South Korea's domestic economy has been his most urgent task.
장기간 이어진 내수 침체 때문에 허약해질 대로 허약해진 우리 경제에 긴급하게 심폐소생술을 시행해야 했습니다.
Lee pointed to his administration's supplementary budget and voucher-style cash handouts, noting signs of improvement such as consumer sentiment at a 7-year high and the Kospi hitting record levels. To sustain that momentum, he says the country must transform its economic ecosystem, shifting away from an over-reliance on real estate speculation toward other investments such as stocks.
수요를 실수요자 중심으로 바꾸고 투기적 또는 투자 유인으로 부동산을 취득하는 일을 최소화시킬 필요가 있는데 그러려면 끊임없이 반복적으로 대책을 내놓을 수밖에 없죠.
So far, his administration has unveiled 2 rounds of real estate measures, the latest just last Sunday, tightening mortgage rules while expanding housing supply. Lee also pledged to support the stock market's growth by reducing political and security risks and boosting high-tech investment through a proactive fiscal policy. Addressing concerns that such spending could swell the national debt, he argued that investing in promising sectors would boost national income and, in turn, improve the country's debt-to-GDP ratio. On the controversial issue of the government's plan to lower the capital gains tax threshold for large shareholders, the president signaled flexibility.
야당도 요구하고 또 여당도 또 그냥 놔두면 좋겠다는 의견이고 저한테 메시지도 막 많이 오고 그런 걸 봐서는 굳이 50억을 10억으로 내리자 반드시 그렇게 해야 되겠다 그렇게 생각하지는 않습니다.
President Lee reaffirmed that such progress will only be possible through unity and communication across party lines, a message he has consistently emphasized since taking office. President Lee says the remaining 4 years and 9 months of his term will be a time of growth and progress through governance rooted in unity. It remains to be seen how his administration will steer the country toward recovery and a new leap forward. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And the recent detention of hundreds of South Korean workers in the U.S. also topped the presser earlier today. President Lee voiced his concerns about future investment in the U.S. by South Korean firms. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min has more.
When asked whether the recent controversial raid at a Hyundai factory in Georgia would affect future Korean investments in the U.S., President Lee Jae-myung responded,
기업들 입장에서는 미국의 현지 공장을 설립한다는 게 이거 앞으로 온갖 불이익을 주거나 아니면 어려워질 텐데 이거 해야 되나? 이런 고민을 안 할 수가 없겠죠.
President Lee said this at a news conference commemorating his first 100 days in office, explaining why their release, initially planned for Wednesday, was delayed. He noted that improving visa regulations is in the works with the U.S., such as issuing visas related to U.S. investment, securing certain quotas, or creating a new type of visa. As for ongoing follow-up trade talks with Washington, after reaching a framework trade deal in July to lower the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs, The South Korean leader said he will never make a decision that goes against the national interests. He added that on the surface, negotiations may seem unreasonable and irrational, but will be concluded in a reasonable way. On North Korea, President Lee noted that cross-border ties remain frosty, but his efforts for peace and dialogue will continue in the interest of the nation.
북미 대화가 열리는 게 한반도 평화와 안정에 도움된다. 미국의 대통령 트럼프라는 사람의 특성이 또 한반도 평화 안정 확보에 더 도움이 된다.
The topic topped the agenda last month when the two leaders met at the Oval Office, as Lee asked Trump to play the role of a peacemaker, while he plays a pacemaker. On relations with Japan, President Lee noted he will take the two-track approach when it comes to disputes and cooperation, adding that such a stance will continue despite a leadership change in Japan, as Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is soon to step down.
The first 100 days in office have been often seen as a yardstick to measure the accomplishments of presidents in their early days. Eyes are on how President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy will materialize for the rest of his 5-year term. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And President Lee's 100-day press conference has ignited sharply contrasting reactions from the ruling Democratic Party and the opposition People Power Party. Our Park Jun-an tells us more.
Marking 100 days since President Lee Jae-myung was inaugurated, the Democratic Party of Korea on Thursday praised Lee's time in office, calling it a period of recovery and progress, and emphasizing efforts to stabilize the nation after a period of unrest. The party said the government has laid the groundwork for economic recovery through supplementary budget measures to ease hardships caused by internal turmoil, and has achieved meaningful results through pragmatic, national interest-focused diplomacy.
Over the past 100 days, the Lee Jae-myung administration has prioritized livelihoods, unity, recovery, and growth. The administration has worked to overcome crises at home and abroad, restore the economy, and advance national interests. The Democratic Party of Korea will continue to deliver changes people can feel, and as the ruling party, take full responsibility for their lives.
The opposition People Power Party, however, criticized the Lee administration by labeling the 100 days as a period of destruction rather than recovery. Party leader Chang Dong-hyuk accused Lee of transforming South Korea's Democratic Republic into a Democratic Party republic, undermining the separation of powers.
I assess President Lee's first 100 days as turning the Democratic Republic, guaranteed in our Constitution, into a Democratic Party republic. Through measures like revision to the Commercial Act and the Yellow Envelope Act, the government is suffocating businesses and driving them abroad. The administration is also leading the nation toward 2,000 trillion won in debt, while downplaying the seriousness of the burden.
The polarized reactions from the ruling and opposition parties signal ongoing tensions that are likely to shape the nation's political landscape in the next few years. With both sides offering starkly different views of the administration's achievements, the first 100 days have set the stage for further debates in the National Assembly and beyond. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
South Korean workers detained by U.S. immigration authorities are finally homebound after spending a week at a detention center in Georgia. They will be back here in South Korea by Friday afternoon. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young is on the line with the details. Hello, Soo-young.
Hi, Sami.
So, Soo-young, the workers are now just hours away from a takeoff at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, aren't they?
That's right. So in 5 hours' time, 316 Koreans will depart from the state of Georgia a week after they were arrested at the Hyundai LG battery plant by U.S. immigration authorities. Having left the detention facility at around 2 a.m. on Thursday local time and traveling over 400 kilometers to the airport, they will soon board their chartered plane scheduled to leave at noon. One person is reportedly staying behind as they may have rights to remain in the country. A total of 330 passengers will board the chartered flight, including 10 Chinese, 3 Japanese, and 1 Indonesian national, who were also detained in the same raid. And they're expected to land at Incheon International Airport at 4 p.m. on Friday.
All right, it's been a rough week. Now, I understand we also know why the planned departure for Wednesday was delayed. What was behind the reason for the delay?
Well, it was very interesting, Hami. Seoul officials say that the Wednesday departure plan was paused by none other than President Donald Trump. He reportedly called for ways to allow Korean workers to stay on at the factory. And he apparently also objected to the Koreans being handcuffed by immigration authorities. Regarding the mass arrest, President Trump and the White House have commented on the value of foreign investment in America, especially in the sectors of semiconductors and batteries, as they emphasize the need to hire and train American workers, but also acknowledging the need for skilled foreign workers in the initial stages. However, Seoul decided to proceed with the return first and perhaps then re-entry later. An official told me that this could be seen as a move that demonstrates Korea's sincere respect for the U.S. law. And as the Koreans proceed with their voluntary departure from the U.S., as negotiated for days by the South Korean government, it seems they have avoided gaining an immigration violation record or any disadvantages that may occur should they want to re-enter the U.S. at a future point.
Right, and behind this whole drama included the talks between South Korea's Foreign Minister Jo Hyun and his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio. How did that go?
Well, according to Seoul's foreign ministry, the two officials met on Wednesday at the White House. The two sides confirmed the arrangement for the detainees' voluntary departure, with Foreign Minister Cho further suggesting the creation of a working group on visa issues.
The visa-related working group was discussed at the Korea-U.S. Foreign Ministers meeting, and consultations will continue at the working level going forward. As a matter of principle, we believe the United States has also agreed.
We can assume that Seoul will press for new visa tracks to accommodate South Korean companies' needs to set up their operations in the United States. Compared to America's other trade partners such as Canada, Mexico, Australia, and Singapore, Seoul has no dedicated visa program for professionals. So while companies like Hyundai, LG, Samsung, SK, and POSCO are investing billions into U.S. plants, they have very challenging timelines for setting up appropriate facilities, as well as staffing them with skilled workers. So without viable visa options, they're basically stuck, and that's what seems to have been behind this whole incident. Workers entering on short-term visas to help set up operations before ultimately leaving the U.S., no intentions to stay. So with this crisis, it seems that the two allied countries are creating the opportunity to improve bilateral pathways for better economic cooperation going forward.
Indeed, hopefully this crisis does turn into an opportunity. Soo-young, thanks for the coverage. Now, in other news, a fierce confrontation erupted between lawmakers across the aisle after the ruling party unilaterally passed a revised bills on special counsel investigations into the previous administration. Now, this came a day after the rival parties had reached an agreement on the revisions. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Despite bipartisan agreement, the ruling party pushed through its own version of the bills to reinforce the 3 special counsel investigations against the Yoon Suk-yeol government. At Thursday's plenary session, the party unilaterally passed revisions to the special counsel investigations into former President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law declaration, allegations against former First Lady Kim Gun-hee, and the death of a Marine during flood relief operations in 2023. Under the bills, special investigations into the martial law attempt and the former First Lady could be extended from 150 to 180 days, while the probe into the Marine's death could be prolonged from 120 to 150 days. This comes a day after the floor leaders of the ruling Democratic Party and main opposition People Power Party agreed to keep the 3 special counsel investigations at their current durations and struck a compromise on staffing, allowing each team up to 10 additional personnel. However, on Thursday morning, the DP declared the negotiations had collapsed, explaining that there had been backlash within the party and that the PPP rejected its offer to resume talks.
I couldn't accept it, and since it went against the party leadership's position, I immediately ordered renegotiations. I was also quite surprised by what happened yesterday.
The PPP, which boycotted the vote, criticized the breakdown of the agreement, saying the DP will be responsible for any future disruptions in the National Assembly.
The original special counsel bill from the DP included many problematic provisions, such as unlimited investigation extensions and an expanded scope. After our party raised objections, a difficult compromise was reached. However, on President Lee Jae-myung's 100th day in office, the DP broke that agreement.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly passed a motion for the arrest of PPP lawmaker Kwon Sung-dong with 173 for, 1 against, 1 abstention, and 2 invalid votes amid a PPP boycott. Last month, a special counsel team filed for an arrest warrant against Kwon for allegedly receiving illegal political funds from a former Unification Church official in 2022. 신하영, Arirang News.
A young teenage girl caught the world's attention last week when she accompanied her father, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, to China. Now, Seoul's intel agency believes that Kim Joo-e's international debut proves she's being groomed as a potential successor of the regime. Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
South Korea's National Intelligence Service told lawmakers on Thursday that Kim Joo-e, the daughter of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, appears to have solidified her status as likely successor after accompanying her father on his recent visit to China. Lawmakers told reporters that Kim Joo-e stayed inside the North Korean embassy and avoided media exposure during her trip, but quote-unquote secured enough of the narrative needed for her position as a potential successor. A lawmaker who attended the National Intelligence Service briefing said, quote-unquote, the purpose of her trip was essentially part of a process to complete the narrative with her succession in mind. Regarding Kim's other children besides Joo-e, the NIS mentioned speculation that another child might have a disability or is studying abroad, but said it was unlikely. The spy agency also said that Kim Jong-un seems to have no major health problems, noting his heart rate and blood pressure are normal. The agency added that, quote-unquote, North Korea did everything possible to minimize exposure of Kim Jong-un and Kim Joo-e's biometric data, such as by using a special plane to transport materials and waste. The NIS said that Kim believes he achieved considerable success in projecting an image of solidarity between North Korea, China, and Russia, and portraying himself as a leader of a normal state. The agency projected that, quote-unquote, based on confidence gained from Kim's trip to China, Pyongyang is likely to take a more assertive stance. Kim's visit to China was seen as a strategic move to bolster his authority at home and highlight close ties with China and Russia against the West. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
One export industry on the rise is K-Beauty. Now, you might be just thinking about simple lotion or makeup, but it goes beyond that. And at the K-Beauty Expo just outside of Seoul, everything is on display. Our Kim Do-yeon was there himself.
For an industry where appearances are everything, this year's K-Beauty Expo Korea is putting its best face forward. It opened its doors on Thursday with the 17th annual event, 30% larger than last year, hosting over 500 companies from 12 nations. K-Beauty brought in over $10 billion in exports last year. And at this expo, it is showing its diversity. It's not just lotion and sunblock at the booths. From hair products to skin healing devices, companies are showing their latest products to potential clients, with some deals offering up to 80% off.
Here at the expo, you can even get your skin analyzed instantly with a 3D image generated. Here, you can see that I have freckles and need to start using sunblock.
But at the heart of this event is connecting businesses. State-run trade agency KOTRA has organized meetings with 166 hand-picked international buyers, with around 1,000 one-on-one meetings like this set up.
Every year, the demand is so high. When we send out notices to attract buyers, we get many inquiries, and the countries are becoming more varied. We are receiving so many applications that it's almost impossible to keep up.
That confidence is especially strong in the U.S. market. Last year, South Korea surpassed France as the top cosmetic exporter to the United States, attracting buyers like Duane, who runs a spa in Detroit, Michigan. He started using and selling K-Beauty products just last year. Now, he's got 20 brands in his store.
If a client can purchase 3 pieces of skincare for the price of 1 U.S. brand, this is
the same results.
Or better, honestly. We are finding that they're hungry for the information.
One new hurdle, though, the 15% tariff.
It's not going to deter me from purchasing because the price is already very good.
And as the booths at the expo suggest, the K-beauty industry's growth wasn't driven by big companies. It is smaller companies that are selling on e-commerce overseas, such as Amazon. For this, Amazon Ads is a global sponsor for the first time. To help brands navigate the digital market, the expo is also hosting seminars like the K-Beauty Insight Concert, offering strategies on market trends and using AI for a competitive edge. The expo runs until Saturday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
From smartphones to electric vehicles, secondary batteries are essential components in a wide range of rechargeable electronics. Because of this growing importance, global competition to secure battery technology and production capabilities is intensifying. For a closer look, we have our economic correspondent Moon Ji-young here in studio. Welcome, Ji-young.
Good evening, Dami.
So, Ji-young, you were at one of the largest battery exhibitions here in South Korea. Tell us more about the show.
Yes, Dami, as you mentioned, I visited the K-Battery Show 2025, dedicated to secondary battery materials, components, and equipment. Secondary batteries are utilized across diverse sectors, including electric vehicles, IT devices, and energy storage systems. They are currently experiencing significant growth, emerging as a core technology, driving recent industrial trends such as electrification and decarbonization. The K-Battery Show displayed a comprehensive array of innovations covering essential products like cathodes, anodes, and electrolytes, alongside intricate components and advanced manufacturing equipment. Beyond the latest materials, the exhibition also delved deep into cutting-edge battery charging systems, robust charging infrastructure, and crucial recycling technologies. It was evident that leading the charge in environmental stewardship, Korean battery companies are actively propelling eco-friendly practices towards a sustainable and greener future.
Now, Ji-young, tell us more about the global battery market. How is South Korea doing, and what's the state of competition among countries around the world?
Well, the global battery market is currently experiencing rapid expansion, mainly driven by the accelerating growth of the electric vehicle sector. According to data from SN Research, the amount of energy held by batteries for EVs registered worldwide grew more than 35% year-over-year from January to July this year. Now, looking at battery market shares, we observe a significant shift in competition. The combined market shares of the 3 Korean battery companies declined in global EV battery use to 16.7%, a 4.4 percentage point decline from the same period last year. This was influenced by a decrease in battery demand from major OEMs in Europe and North America. On the other hand, Chinese battery makers, including CATL and BYD, continued their impressive growth momentum during the same period. Their growth and that of other Chinese manufacturers is greatly fueled by their price competitiveness and the rapid rise of Chinese-made LFP batteries, which are increasingly being adopted by major global automakers. This strategic shift is allowing Chinese firms to expand their presence not only domestically, but also significantly in markets within Europe.
This shift can be attributed to the rising consumer demand for cost-effective electric vehicles and their corresponding batteries, which has in turn boosted the demand for LFP batteries and consequently led to a decline in our market share.
Well, that certainly highlights the immense pressures on the South Korean battery manufacturers. Now, Ji-young, then what's the outlook for South Korea's battery market moving forward from here?
Well, the Korean battery industry has indeed faced a complex crisis in recent years, grappling with a stagnant EV market, U.S. trade risks, and aggressive low-cost competition from China. However, fortunately, recent shifts in both domestic and international environments are now providing crucial opportunities for a new leap forward. Speaking about Korea's strengths that differentiate it from competitors like China, one expert said that
while source technology is crucial, the ability to build factories, produce batteries on a large scale while minimizing defect rates, and consistently meet delivery deadlines. In terms of overall production process capability and technology, I believe we are quite ahead of China.
We've also seen a reduction in trade uncertainties with the enactment of the U.S.'s One Big and Beautiful Act and the successful conclusion of Korea-U.S. reciprocal tariff negotiations. These developments are offering K-Batteries new opportunities to secure dominance not only in the EV market, but also in the ESS market in the U.S. In this context, the Korean government is pushing forward with a battery policy targeting substantial support through tax incentives and financial aid for domestic producers, expanded R&D for next-generation batteries like all-solid-state solutions, and increased deployment of ESS solutions. Moving forward, key tasks for the K-battery industry to prosper include continuous technology development alongside achieving supply chain independence.
All right, Ji-young, thank you so much for the coverage on such a promising field. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Taebaek in Gangwon-do province started with a chilly morning at 6 degrees, the lowest in the country. The day started below 20 degrees Celsius this morning with a temperature of 19.9 degrees in Seoul as well. However, the temperatures rose sharply under the hot sun, and Seoul rose to 32 degrees during the day. Rain is expected all over the country starting from tomorrow. Heavy rain will be concentrated, especially in the central regions. More than 120 millimeters will fall in southern Gyeonggi-do province, inland and mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, and Chungcheongnam-do province. Friday morning will start at 21 degrees in Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju. Highs will rise up to only below 30 degrees in most parts of the country. With rain falling, the late summer heat will also slow down around the western parts of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
How to survive in Korea. Workplace. Step 1. Lunchtime. The most important morning routine is to check today's menu. Food is essential for survival. Memorize today's menu. The highlight of office life. Lunchtime. Rice in the bottom left, soup in the bottom right. The top is for the sides. The sauce and the spoon go here. This is the basic layout, but it's a bit odd to switch rice and soup. When you're done, pour the leftovers into the soup bowl. It doesn't look that appetizing, so wait until others are done eating. Step 2. Neng, nep, nenep. These are the most used expressions at work. Choose the most appropriate form. Neng, nep, nenep. Remember that the formal ne can sound a bit stiff. Did you just say yes? Absolutely not acceptable. You want to find the right word for the right occasion. Step 3. Desteria. Desteria is the oasis in the desert. Show them your character. If you're not the diligent type, get a stooky plant. Work is tough. Laugh and the whole world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. Stay put like the stooky that survives in the desert. Hang in there until the end. Of course, you can always quit. You matter more than anything else. Step 4. Survival kit. Every worker needs a survival kit. Survival kit level 1. This position gets the most exposure. Grab one when you need a sugar boost. Always keep a few treats you can offer your co-workers. Survival kit level 2. These are for hunger pangs before and after a meal. You'll need them when you take a coffee break with your office buddies. Survival kit level 3. Trash talking your boss with your soulmate. Did you survive in the workplace? Office romance? Be careful. Even the photocopier knows all the gossip.
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit.
It's a massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang. 도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 에이펙은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 에이펙 2025로 이어집니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. Marking his first 100 days in office, President Lee Jae-myung framed his administration's early tenure as the beginning of South Korea's renewed presence on the global stage and vowed to expand its presence. Let's take a listen.
G7 정상회의를 시작으로 한일 정상회담, 한미 정상회담까지 숨가쁜 날들을 이어왔습니다. 조만간 유엔 총회 그리고 에이펙도 기다리고 있습니다. 외교 정상화에 만족하지 않고 대한민국의 국격과 위상을 더욱 높일 수 있도록 앞으로도 최선을 다하겠습니다.
It's a clear signal of intent, but one that comes amid growing strategic complexity, renewed tensions with North Korea, a fragile thaw with Japan, and deepening fault lines between Washington and Beijing. Tonight, we examine whether the Lee administration has laid real diplomatic groundwork and how it plans to navigate what comes next. And for this, we invite Hana Kim, associate professor at Seogang University's GSIS. A big welcome.
Thanks for having me again.
And also joining us is Dr. John Nielsen Wright, head of the Japan and Korea's program at the Center for Geopolitics at the University of Cambridge. Good to see you.
And you too. Always good to join you.
Now, let's begin a discussion with Professor Kim. So with today's 100-day address by President Lee, of course, he actually declared that diplomacy has been normalized and pledged to elevate the nation's global stature through practical diplomacy. Do you think the administration's foreign policy performance over the past 100 days support that vision, or is that still in the promise phase?
It seems as though he is trying to normalize relations. I wouldn't say that we're fully there yet, but considering the circumstances, it seems as though the administration has been trying to elevate South Korea's global status. Now, from the very beginning of his tenure, President Lee did not have a lot of time to properly get settled in after the snap election and the quick inauguration. And even in his address marking the first 100 days in office, President Lee has tried to show this progress by making various statements. He vowed to rebuild a broken nation from its very foundations and to achieve national unity. And he also stated that Korea is back on the world stage. But regarding foreign policy performance, over the past 100 days, President Lee has attended the G7 summit, which was followed by other bilateral summits with Japan and the United States. And through these diplomatic engagements, he has consistently sought to demonstrate that South Korea is a reliable partner in the international community. Now, at the G7 summit, for example, he expressed Korea's commitment to contribute actively to global issues such as stabilizing supply chains, addressing climate change, and responding to the war in Ukraine. But while he has had these summits, he's also been met with external events that have limited performance. So, for example, at the summit with Japan, he signaled a practical willingness to normalize bilateral relations, but Ishiba has also recently decided to resign. And at the U.S. ROC summit, he reaffirmed the strength of the alliance and underscored his intention to deepen strategic cooperation across security, economic, and technological domains. But then we also saw the Hyundai LG raid that took place, which added a bit of tension to the alliance as well. So in this way, President Lee's actions over the past 100 days suggest that domestically he has been aiming to highlight stability and governance. And internationally, he's also been trying to show that he hopes to establish South Korea's image as a responsible state, contributing to a lot of these global challenges. But there are still a lot of factors that will influence this effort, and how it will influence it still remains a bit unclear.
Right, we'll have to see how it flows. Now, let's also listen to Dr. Nielsen Wright's opinion. So, beyond the symbolism of the speech itself, how would you assess the administration's past foreign policy performance so far?
I think within the last 100 days, they've done pretty well, actually. And that's partly a function of having an experienced team around the president, people like National Security Advisor Wee Sun-lak, the foreign minister himself, Cho Hyun. These are people who understand foreign policy, who know the importance of planning and preparation, and who are thinking quite deliberately about how best to position the new administration, even before the election. So I think with those safe hands around him, it's helped him execute his foreign policy, I think, quite wisely. And then at the core of it is this focus on pragmatism, and I think also, interestingly, bipartisanship. The government has just announced the appointment, or the nomination rather, of No Jae-hyun, the son of former President No Taeyu. That's a really significant initiative, partly because, of course, he comes from, if you like, a conservative background. His father, No Taeyu, was well regarded in China because he played such an important role in normalizing relations back in the early 1990s between South Korea and China. We've seen similar deft, I think, ambassadorial appointments, the appointment of Kang Kyu-ah to the United States, of course, a former foreign minister herself, head of the Asia Society, and therefore well embedded in the United States at the moment. And then another ambassadorial appointment, the appointment of Lee Hyuk, a former Japan hand who was minister in Tokyo, who knows Japan very well. All of these are very encouraging signs. More generally, I think, if you look at the public statements coming out of the administration, I was in Seoul about a week ago, and I was struck talking to officials in Korea at the time, the language about being a responsible state, having a future-oriented strategy with the United States, adopting a steady, principled approach. All of this, I think, is very wise, but also the breadth of the coverage that the government is showing in terms of all of those issues, not just alliance policy, but supply chain resilience, development assistance, climate change, and being global. I think that's really striking. And that reflects a type of continuity, it has to be said, with the previous administration.
Right, so we're starting to see some kind of a direction, a style, even if the substance is actually still evolving. Now, building on this theme of confident, practical diplomacy, President Lee actually emphasized pragmatic diplomacy as a core principle. How much of that has translated into visible outcomes so far, Professor Kim, and how effective has it been in practice?
You know, even before his inauguration, President Lee has consistently pledged to pursue a policy of practical diplomacy. So in his 100-day address, he once again emphasized this and you know, in a quote, you know, through a confident and practical diplomacy, South Korea will stand tall in the world and firmly safeguard the peaceful everyday lives of its citizens. So by practical diplomacy, President Lee refers to an approach that prioritizes South Korea's national interests above all, valuing pragmatic benefits and cooperation over ideological confrontation. So in foreign and security affairs, this means anchoring policy in the U.S.-ROC alliance while simultaneously advancing practical cooperation with neighboring countries such as China and Japan. But on the economic front, it entails focusing on tangible achievements that directly enhance national interests in areas such as advanced industrial supply chains, climate change, and energy security, as Dr. Nilsson Wright mentioned earlier as well. You know, but President Lee's diplomacy towards Japan has clearly shown that his practical diplomacy doctrine. You know, despite what may have been assumed and despite the widespread expectations before President Lee assumed office, he held a phone conversation with Prime Minister Ishiba earlier than China's President Xi Jinping. And for the first time since 1965, he chose to visit Japan ahead of the United States. And more importantly, he stated that his intention to uphold existing agreements between the two countries regarding the issues of comfort women and forced labor. So with this kind of forward-leaning stance, he has helped revive bilateral relations to a certain extent. And he's also restored shuttle diplomacy between the two leaders and achieved concrete outcomes in areas such as security cooperation and joint responses to North Korea's nuclear threat. So these actions, in some, really do exemplify his essence in practical diplomacy.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of, ties with Japan, like Professor Kim has mentioned, shuttle diplomacy resumed very quickly. But with Tokyo's politics direction shifting to the right, Dr. Nilsson Wright, how fragile is the current thaw in Korea-Japan relations?
There's no doubt that the change of leadership in Japan reflects, I think, an element of political uncertainty that raises an important question mark about the durability of the bilateral partnership. But we have two governments, both politicians and civil servants, who are inherently pragmatic. As Professor Kim was saying, early on, the Lee administration demonstrated the centrality of Japan in its foreign policy strategy by making that first symbolically hugely important visit to Japan ahead of the visit to Washington. The last time that happened was in 1961, when then President Park Chung-hee went and met with Prime Minister Ikeda before meeting with then President Kennedy in Washington. So repeating that pattern, if you like, is a sign that the bilateral relationship between America's two most important Northeast Asian allies is really important. And in a way, we've seen an attempt to build on past agreements. The Camp David Agreement of 2023 reaffirmed as part of this meeting between the two sides, but most importantly, learning from one another when it comes to dealing with the biggest player in town, which of course is the United States and Donald Trump. I think looking forward, with Mr. Ishiba now having signalled his intention to step down, and we're looking to a leadership election in early October for the LDP, the question is who is likely to succeed him. And of the candidates who are seen as being in the front running, if you like, Koizumi Shinjiro, the agriculture minister, son of a former prime minister, is seen as, if you like, the continuity candidate. The candidate who would be probably most likely to maintain a cooperative relationship with South Korea. The same is true of another name that's been put into the frame, Hayashi Yoshimasa, the chief cabinet secretary, former foreign minister, somewhat dovish on foreign policy issues, also likely to be very pragmatic. The wild card is Takaichi Sanai, the only female candidate, the heir apparent to late Prime Minister Abe, seen by some as something of a hawk, a bit of a nationalist. I would caution against overstressing that. But there is no doubt, as we've seen in the last few months, a tilt rightwards in Japan. We've seen that reflected in the 3 defeats that the LDP faced and the emergence of this new party, Sanseito, the Participation Party, a populist party, xenophobic, anti-immigration, favouring nuclear rearmament, for example, or nuclear armament rather for Japan. This shift is important, but offsetting all of that are all the areas where Japan and South Korea have common interests, a common threat in the form of North Korea, a common practical challenge of working with the United States, and common areas of cooperation regionally with China through the trilateral mechanism between China, Japan, and South Korea. There are opportunities for closer coordination. And economic trade liberalization, really important given the transactional approach of the Trump administration. Japan has played a leading role in advancing CPTPP. South Korea is now showing more of an appetite to consider joining. That should, I hope, become more of a priority under President Lee, and that strengthens the opportunities for closer cooperation between the two countries.
Right. So a lot of factors coming in, and we'll also have to keep close tabs on the leadership election in the future. Now, let's shift our focus to the alliance with the U.S. Dr. Nielsen Wright. The President Lee-Trump summit appeared smooth on the surface, but there's still some unresolved issues like tariff talks and Georgia plant incident that exposed deeper tensions. Taking all these into account, how would you evaluate this alliance right now?
Well, it's shaky, I think it's fair to say, given the unprecedented nature of Donald Trump's style of politics, his focus on a very assertive trade policy, very transactional. And of course, the Georgia controversy could have blown up into something far more serious, unprecedented scenes of ICE agents arresting Korean workers at the Hyundai plant. I think we've seen an effort by both sides to dampen tensions, and I've been impressed by how calmly the Korean side has responded to what must have felt like a real provocation. Donald Trump himself, of course, by suggesting that those workers might want to stay in the United States after the crisis broke, I think was also showing his awareness of the effort, the importance of ameliorating those tensions. But there's a kind of dysfunctional quality to the Trump administration. Different elements within the administration have said different things. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, labeled some of those Korean workers as criminal, which obviously was not a particularly healthy way of characterizing the citizens of a key alliance partner. We are now seeing, I think, efforts by the two sides to keep things on track. The summit meeting, of course, in Washington, those scenes of the two men sitting side by side was a great success, I think, for President Lee. He handled that dialogue, I think, with great diplomatic success and aplomb. And of course, a lot of preparation went into that meeting. Some of the efforts to bring business representatives, 16 who accompanied President Lee to the United States, reflects that. The brilliant suggestion of Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, I think, played right into, if you like, Trump's need to have that affirmative commitment to American economic interests. It was a good slogan. The devil will be in the details in terms of delivering a settlement that will actually keep both sides on side. And then if that weren't enough, you've got the question of security. And big anxiety in Seoul about what so-called strategic flexibility is likely to mean, with the United States now seeming to step back a little from its so-called ironclad commitment to South Korea. Questions about the potential redeployment of American forces off the peninsula, focusing their needs on Taiwan and other areas. This is raising questions about how South Korea adapts to that perhaps more ambivalent approach to alliance relations in the security space by the US. That will require more of a commitment, more military spending, and being more proactive in anticipating how those tensions between the two countries might play out.
So considering the circumstances, it seems as though it's quite fragile at the moment. Now, amid this situation, then, Professor Kim, what kind of strategy could South Korea be developing to, protect its interests while evolving with the relationship between ROK and U.S.?
So the relationship is volatile and it is changing quite a bit. And it is true that President Trump has been taking a much more of a transactional approach towards U.S. alliances, including South Korea. And he has repeatedly disregarded, established diplomatic conventions between allies. But at the same time, I think it would be a bit of a mistake to think that Trump acts without any guiding principle. He has continued on the basic principle of America first, which prioritizes U.S. interests above anything else. And this has been consistent. And South Korea has sought to work with this. And one example or representative example is one that Dr. Nielsen-Wright already mentioned, but it's the one where Seoul successfully prevented the excessive tariff hikes by proposing the MASCA, or Make America Shipbuilding Great Again, an initiative. And these types of policies need to evolve beyond short-term crisis management and become the foundation of a long-term strategic direction. So to enhance the sustainability of the alliance, South Korea needs to develop strategies to institutionalize the principle of reciprocity in U.S.-ROK relations. And this would help prevent the alliance from being destabilized by shifts in U.S. domestic politics in particular. But at the same time, South Korea needs to continue to strengthen its own defense self-reliance and cushion against uncertainties stemming from changes in U.S. policy. So enhancing the competitiveness of the domestic defense industry and securing leadership in areas such as cyberspace and new technologies will raise Korea's strategic value amid uncertainties of international and U.S. politics.
Right, so developing domestic risk management would also be very helpful. Now, Professor Kim, let's also touch upon North Korea. So by halting loudspeaker broadcasts and also proposing to revive the September 19 military accord, the Lee administration kind of signaled a clear willingness to reduce tensions. But Pyongyang has visibly strengthened its alignment with Russia and China with no specific answer to Seoul's proposals. How would you assess the current state of relationship between the two Koreas?
So among everything that South Korea and the Lee administration has been doing for the past 100 days, especially regarding foreign policy initiatives, it really seems as though inter-Korean ties appear to be the most stagnant. President Lee has made repeated conciliatory gestures towards the North, such as halting the loudspeaker broadcast and also proposing to revive the September 19th military accord, just like you mentioned. But Pyongyang has also not responded in kind. Instead, it's stressed that the two Koreas are hostile states, and President Lee and the Lee administration in general must have felt some frustration regarding this. And in his meeting with President Trump, he also honestly admitted that his own engagement efforts could not not resolve North Korea problems. And he has stated, that the only person who can make progress is President Trump. And this may work in part to flatter Trump, but it also reflects a certain degree of reality. And regrettably, the situation is unlikely to change anytime soon. North Korea has strengthened its ties with Russia, and Kim Jong-un's recent visit to China has also revived the North's relationship with Beijing. And, moreover, President Trump has signaled a favorable stance towards Kim Jong-un and expressed a willingness to meet with him. And even though the North Korean economy remains strained, it has shown some signs of substantial improvement. So under these circumstances, Pyongyang has little incentive to pursue better relations with the South. But it does seem as though President Lee will continue to try. Even earlier today, he vowed to push for more dialogue despite North Korea's lukewarm response. Unfortunately, the cards in South Korea's hands are quite limited.
Then, so with this, we know that the summit between President Trump and President Lee President Lee has called for South Korea to become a pacemaker. Based on the administration's diplomatic actions so far, Dr. Nielsen-Wright, how realistic is that positioning?
Well, I think the positioning reflects what Professor Kim was saying, demonstrating that South Korea is the junior partner alongside the United States. And that's designed, I think, both to reflect the reality that the United States is a key interlocutor with North Korea. It's also designed to keep Donald Trump on side. I'm sure President Lee, given his progressive credentials, will want to continue to reach out to North Korea where feasible. It's also good pragmatic security policy. South Korea cannot afford to become the spark that prompts a conflict in the region or more widely, and that's a reflection of the increased threat that North Korea represents. So trying to ameliorate tensions between the two Koreas matters. But it's absolutely the case that Kim Jong-un has no practical need or incentive to reach out himself or to reciprocate those overtures. He's emboldened as a result of that very important summit in Beijing that we just saw, the first time that a North Korean leader has participated in a multilateral gathering where his status has been, at least formally, on the same level as that of the Russian and Chinese leaders. And that's extraordinary, really. It's unprecedented. And that's giving him a great deal of confidence. So I think for South Korea, for now, its role may be in shaping the environment it's part of, and that could involve more minilateral coordination with other states, with Australia, and with European partners, like the United Kingdom, for example.
Right, a very crucial point to end today's discussion. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Dr. Nielsen-Wright.
Pleasure.
And Professor Kim, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
Newscenter. Anchor Kim Da-mi's concise delivery brings major issues from home and abroad. We examine domestic affairs in a global context. And our news covers economic situations, social issues, cultural updates, and more. Swift on-the-scene reports enhance our information reliability.
with more on Press Perspective.
How much of the news do you really understand? Delve into a single issue with Press Perspective. Anchor Min Sun-hee's insightful delivery meets the expert panel's sharp analysis. Through multifaceted interpretations of diplomacy, economy, and socioculture, discover a wider perspective. Come explore the diverse K-culture and arts world. Performances that are traditional and original, contemporary and classical,